vows, and I really don't want to talk about the vows the whole time. It's just, oh, whoops.
No, everyone's a little bit sick of talking about the corona apocalypse that has taken over our lives. So, okay, it looks like it is actually recording. No promises. I don't know if it's going to work. I've never tried it. So we're just gonna, it says it is. So
the red button is showing on my screen. It says recording, and it is recording. It's flashing.
As long as we don't end up like that guy who was not wearing any clothes. Remember that? I don't know if you saw it on Twitter. That dude who stood up during the Zoom meeting for the corona thing, and he was just completely naked. And there were like 12 people on that chat who were like, "Oh my God, no! What are you doing?" He just kept wandering back and forth in front of the. You didn't see that? Oh, it's brilliant. Yeah. Oh, by the way, everyone, welcome to King Penguin Radio. If you could call it radio if we're still filming, but welcome. I'm here with Marcus Fu in Perth. Wave, Marcus, say hello. How are you doing over there in the apocalypse on the other side of Australia?
Good, very good. It's actually not that bad, although I'm having really terrible internet problems. So, yeah, but it so. But the beauty of living in the most isolated city of Perth, we're most likely to be the last ones hit by the apocalypse. So we'll most likely wake up one day and go, "What the hell happened?"
Yeah, you're basically like that, those people in those horror films for the pandemics who you sit there on an island completely protected and the rest of the world collapses around you and you've got no idea what happened. Meanwhile, the rest of us are all dead or zombies or whatever the plot of that particular B-grade sci-fi is.
Well, we are an island within the island. It's like a border close to WA. So basically, the Western Australian newspapers put it as the United States of WA because we're like an island within the island. It's like a whole border close to WA. So basically, yeah, we're like
ocean, desert, death. Like that's sort of your four corners of protection around you.
Yeah, we have like a whole swamp of ocean. I forgot what ocean it is. I know there's 4 different types of
Indian,
ocean. But
Pacific,
Southern.
Huh?
Oh no, okay, I remember mine as the Christmas Island side.
Oh yes.
So we just have the ocean and we have like a massive desert to the eastern state. It's like between us it's like this huge desert. So yeah.
Well, we're all locked down. I don't know how bad it is in WA, but here, if you go out for a drive in your own car or to an abandoned beach, you got cops arriving to harass you. Like, seriously. But what I don't like is they harass you for walking on your own on a deserted beach, right? But then they get you to line up outside Centrelink for your money. Or you can use public transport. Like, that's not how quarantine works. Quarantine doesn't know about your needs. It's just a proximity. What are they doing? Yeah.
And I love how they have all these people lying out so close to each other in Centrelink. And if you go out for and you just sit on a park bench, it's like you committed murder.
Did you see, like, I don't know if you saw it. There was a guy who was paddleboarding on his own in the water and they chased him down. He was paddleboarding. Who's he going to infect on the ocean? The fish?
I know. It is. I know. It's just really. It's so stupid to watch.
I don't want to reach the point where we're welding people in their apartment blocks. Like, pandemics are bad, but I do draw the line at being welded inside your own building.
Yeah.
AKA
I mean, like Aussies are not the type to stay at home all day. I mean, that's not what we do.
Welcome to my world. I have no change in my behavior. I'm still trapped on my farm. And
I spent a whole year trying to find a job trapped in my house, so I can call that exercise for this pandemic apocalypse. But now I have internet problems. Most likely run out of internet. I have no internet, so I'm not prepared for that. Although I do have a PS4, but like
I've got mine right here. My PlayStation is here, and I can't decide if I want to play video games or watch movies. I've got a short attention span. Also, I'm on the
How
last level of my video game. I keep dying, and it's frustrating.
I mean, yeah, it's just the MEN, the Wi-Fi, the internet is just, it's absolutely terrible. Last week of TAFE and internet crashes, and we launched a complaint with MEN, but I have preferred they're not going to do anything for weeks and months. Oh, it's terrible. Just to any of you watching, to any of you watching, if you have a government that says we have an internet plan, uh, no, don't let them do it, because in Australia we did that with Kevin Rudd NBN. Everyone thought it was a good plan. I think he wrote it on the back of a coaster, like a back of a something on the aeroplane, and they implemented it, and it's just been a terrible,
Well,
terrible.
I was telling you that I used to help. I had all these retail shops, and so I used to have to deal with the NBN when they'd come through and send little notifications through the mail that they were going to put the NBN in your store, and they give you no notice. Oh, you right? Food's gone. Food's back. You right? Yeah, so I used to have retail stores, and we'd have to install the NBN, and it'd come at random. So you get these little friendly, passive-aggressive messages through the mail that would say, "Hey, let you know we're going to roll out NBN in this general area. So yeah, we're going to reorganize your life." And so you'd have to organize your own existing contracts around that. But then they wouldn't do it. They just would not install it, and you'd ring them, and no one would know when it was coming, or if it was coming, or who was doing it. And then it had happened without warning. 2-3 months later down the track, you'd wake up one day and your shop would be offline. So I used to have 3 different internet connections to make sure my existing one, presumably the NBN when it arrived, and a mobile one, to deal with the chaos that is the NBN terrible installation. But interesting question for you is, what's it like being a student during coronavirus, having to use the internet for your education instead of being able to go into class? Like, what's that like? Crap?
Oh, by the way, that was my mom. She thought I was online. She's like, better not, because that used up all the data. I don't think I'm using the internet for this, because I've got it installed on my laptop.
You definitely use the internet for this. This is streaming across the internet.
I'm not sure, but I have a feeling that she's gonna be like, "Don't use the internet too much." It's gonna be terrible. Anyway, as a student, it's terrible because I have to do services. To pass this course, I have to do 36 services in
So
a row.
you're in the hospitality industry, yes? You're studying hospitality. So
Mhm.
I'm guessing your course should be hands-on, and now you can't do that.
Well, we have theory that but like you have 5 hours of service on a day. So you start 11 to 3. And you basically you use that service to serve your customers, to sharpen your hospitality skills, and to do your practical assessments. So because you need to pass those assessments to pass the units of competency. And um and like if you're in class, you have a better chance asking the lecturers for help, whereas you have to email them, and it takes days for them to respond. And you have very limited help because you use the resources on Blackboard, and
So
you obviously use Google search.
do you get
But like at
do
the
you get a
same,
discount off your course for this? Because obviously your quality of learning has been dropped. So do you get any kind of discount for the course now, or
when you enter insert free, WA state government has a initiative. There's like $1,000 off for cert free. Cert 4, you had to pay the full price. Diploma, you can get the federal government's vet student loans. So yeah,
so they
that's
didn't offer you anything for this crisis to help with the additional
well.
cost of studying?
They're trying to do blended learning, which is online delivery. that you you can email them for help. The lecturers have been assigned to the units, but after that, pretty much, yeah, you don't get anything else. You just have to be able to do it at home on your own, on online, on the laptop or your computer, submit it by the deadline, and yeah, get it marked,
You know,
pass the unit.
there is a danger, particularly not so much for university, but for the school kids, that parents and the students are going to learn that they can teach themselves better on their own than through the courses. Because I've noticed and had an interesting conversation with a teacher uh, that the quality of the books, particularly in school these days, are so far below what I went through and probably what you went through, that they can't even go home now and use their books to learn like they used to. So I think there'll be some interesting questions coming out to the education department of, hey, why are our textbooks so crap? How did we go so wrong so quickly with our education system now that parents are getting forced to get involved with their kids' learning? Do you think that that might be something that we talk about in politics, in a few months'
I
time
wrote
after all
an
this?
entire article about our education system, and I actually didn't mention textbooks, but but if the textbooks are crap, then they're most likely influenced by what's in the curriculum.
Correct.
And
Absolutely.
in the curriculum, there's something called cross curricular, something like that. In every of the main subjects like maths, English, science, and humanities, even though I think humanities should just be kicked out because humanities is a terrible subject.
Mm.
Um, it things like Aboriginal affairs, Asia Pacific influence, climate change, sustainable development, and you just kind of look at it and go, "Oh wait, how does this provide logical reasoning and ability to you know,
It doesn't.
be an adult world? Like, unless you're going to go work in the UN, you won't need sustainable development. You
Those
won't
are
need,
topics that should be
you
later
know,
on
it's
at
like,
university.
I mean, unless you're going to work in Extinction Rebellion, you would need climate change, but they're all linked into each of all these subjects. And it just presses down the standard of learning, and teachers have to, they pass the work just keep piling up. They focus on, I mean, what on earth does Asia Pacific Aboriginal sustainable development have to do with maths and English? I mean, they have they can't look at Jane Austen. By the way, I've never read Jane Austen. They can't look at Jane Austen unless it's from a feminist point of view, or unless it's from like a gender biased point of view. And I'm pretty sure that's not what Jane Austen thought
No,
when she wrote her
there's something that
books.
even when I was in school, I had to, which is a fair while ago now. They had this Marxist idea of the author is dead, and so what the author's intent was doesn't matter. And I used to get into arguments with my teachers in my English classes to be like, you know what? When you're studying a text, the author's intent does matter, because what they were trying to say is part of why they wrote the book in the first place. So, of course, you can take your own ideas from it. But if you're studying it critically as a text and as a piece of our literary history, yeah, the author's intent really, really does matter. But we got distracted by books, probably because we both have a love for books. But what I was going to ask you is your new pet hobby on Twitter, which is the Democrats. And I know you want to have a little chat about them. So what's bothering you, or what are you interested in with the Democrats at this point in time? Go on rant. Go
Ah,
through rant.
I know. I just feel so sorry for Joe Biden because every time he turns up in front of a camera, he makes bumbling mistakes. Like he will do a press conference and then he will look to the side and he'll be like, as if he doesn't know what he's doing, as if he's floating in space, and he's made like a conga line of mistakes. As in saying the wrong things, like he doesn't know what a day is, or he doesn't know where he is. And he's 70 something, so he should be self-isolating for the virus. He's 70 something, and I think for a moment of time when the pandemic hit and it started to get real, he just disappeared. Like nobody knew where he was. Like he just vanished off the campaign trail. You know,
I
they were
don't think he
like,
knows where he is. I think he's confused.
and they're like social distancing. I think Joe Biden took that and just ran off. But he just doesn't know where he doesn't know what he's doing. I think he's seen that he has cognitive problem, and he wants to run for the Oval Office. I don't think he actually has the cognitive fitness to be the president. But then, if you don't want Joe Biden, you got Bernie Sanders, which is basically like the American version of Jeremy Corbyn, and he's a lot more terrifying. Like,
So
I think I watched it.
are we
I
down?
watched it.
I lost track of the American debate. Are we down to Biden and Sanders, and that's it? Is Warren out and gone? Wow, that's so. So hang on, seriously, we've got Biden and Sanders. That's it. Are you
Amy
serious?
Klobuchar, that gay man who stuff that whose last name I can't be bothered learning.
Wow.
You got Elizabeth Warren, you got Kamala Harris, you got Cory Booker, you got Tulsi Gabbard, you got Andrew Yang, all and Peter O'Rourke, all left the race. Majority of them endorse Joe Biden, by the way. So it's down to Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump. But then
That
you
is
got Bernie
insane.
Sanders. But then you got Bernie Sanders, who I watched the Perfect video. You would not believe this. This is not his supporters. This is his people who work in this campaign. Bernie Sanders. So like, we need to set up these gulag camps for Nazis. We basically mean Donald Trump supporters to de-Nazi them because they're Nazis, and we need to create these gulag
Are they aware
camps.
that they're the socialists?
They said concentration camps. These are the people who work inside Bernie Sanders' campaign, and he has people supporting him like Linda Sassou, who that
Oh, she's
Louis
terrible.
who have called Jews termite, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, all back him. So the squad backs him, the hard left squad backs him. But he's lost a series of primaries. He's lost a series of important like I call them rounds, like Super Tuesday, South Carolina primary. So his campaign is floundering. Joe Biden could take the nomination,
He's
because
so hopeless.
it's funny. Like they've had 4 years to find the perfect candidate, and they're going to be down to a guy who, at best, doesn't know what day it is, and at worst, he yells at American workers and he calls them full of shit. So
You can't
he
tell
had a
me.
moment when he walked up to a worker, and it was one of those. It reminded me of
that.
Bill Shorten. He was wearing a vest. He was like a blue collar worker, and he just pointed at him. He yelled at him, "You're full of shit!" And it reminded me of Bill Shorten, how he treated Australians during the presidential election. And Joe Biden also said, go vote with somebody else, to a worker. And it reminded me of Bill Shorten, how he said that. Well, not Bill Shorten, Chris Bowen, who said that and screwed up Labour's campaign. So I'm just seeing parallels of Labour and the Democrats. I just don't think Democrats. I think they've been too obsessed with impeachment and Russia and Ukraine to even bother trying to find a perfect candidate.
But like
And
if
now,
you look at Democrats over there in America, there are plenty of even academic Democrats, right, who I disagree with and think are stupid. But that being said, they are less crazy and better qualified for this position than the people that the Democratic Party are putting forward. So how on earth do you get these absolute nightmares who can barely say a sentence without having an aide help them through it, or they're snipping kids' hair, or they're completely off on some totalitarian communist rant? I mean, how do they get to such bad candidates?
Oh, let's not forget that Joe Biden loves to sniff girls, and he's so awkward around women. I mean, it's just
He's creepy.
can't.
He's creepy.
And no, but I think this pandemic has probably stopped him from doing that.
The social distancing has actually helped Biden's career. Now, that is not what I expected to be the case.
he's also the type of person he's he was Vice President of Barack Obama, and he made friendship bracelet, and he's just so awkward. I think one time he mispronounced his name. Um, oh God, he just. It, I mean, I feel so sorry for him. I think he should to a retirement home. Nobody's pulling him aside and going, "You probably should stop this because it's embarrassing." But no, nobody's doing that.
Okay, here's a question. Who do you think? Do you think it's going to be Biden or Sanders? Like, if you had to pick today who was going to be the final nominee, who do you think would run? Which one?
It had to be Joe Biden because I think that the Democrats are terrified of Bernie Sanders because if Bernie Sanders wins the nomination, they'll be seen as the American counterpart to the Labour Party in Britain, hard-left socialist, communist, and that terrifies the American public. I don't think an
So
ideology.
they'll draw that line in the sand, and they'll say no, Sanders is too
Oh,
far
no,
gone.
and also, I mean, if Bernie Sanders is looking like to be the winner, I have a feeling they might broker the convention and rob him of the nomination like they did with Hillary 4 years ago. They might have to because I have a feeling that no ideology frightens the American people more than socialism, communism. That's an ideology that scares them. I agree with John Ruddock when he says that they're going to rob Bernie Sanders in nomination. I think they will because Biden's like the establishment candidate. I mean, Hillary's not coming back. He's not going to get Hillary as vice president. Although that would be hilarious. Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton. That would be hilarious.
Oh, hilarious! It'd be terrifying.
No,
Terrifying.
it'd be like he will step down and then tomorrow morning it'll be like Madam President Hillary Clinton.
You know, I have a feeling that if Trump wins the next election, which even given the world-ending pandemic, I still think that Trump is going to win the next election.
He has some problems in areas, but like the American people are not going to look at the Democrats and go, "No, you guys are insane. You tried to impeach him over whatnot. You are applauding this economy falling apart because of jobs. Like we're going to go with Donald Trump
Not
because
just
of
that, with the Americans so close to communism at the moment, the last thing they're going to do is put a communist in charge. They don't want that. They don't want to go communist, so they're going to keep a businessman in charge of the country. It's basically a company to make sure that it pulls it back from the line. That's what I think. It'll be tempered by the fact they're terrified of communism.
Yeah, it's just like in Australia when we were one election away from this weird left-wing Labour-style socialism, and how close Britain was to Jeremy Corbyn's communism. It's actually terrifying how close we were. Britain, Australia, and other countries were all close to becoming communist utopias. America is facing that question as well. And I mean, if America falls to communism, that will destroy them more than China or Iran or any of their foreign enemies. That would just completely.
Oh, not only that, it would also screw over the world economy because, as we know, communists don't make money, they take money. So if they don't have an America creating wealth, they have nothing to use. But I was thinking the other day, talking about people who dodge bullets. Nigel Farage dodging bullets. Nigel Farage dodged a bullet stepping back from a role in government with basically Boris Johnson has been left with a huge amount of shit to clean up with from the pandemic. And so Nigel's free to continue what he does best, which is motivating.
Oh, now he has the coronavirus. And did you see that recent video? He looked absolutely terrible.
Who did?
Boris Johnson. He has the coronavirus. And
I haven't seen the video. I heard he had the virus.
Oh, it looked absolutely terrible. It looked like he'd been through a Borton bag. It just looked absolutely shocking. So basically, Prince Charles had the coronavirus, Boris Johnson had the coronavirus, the health minister had a coronavirus, another health minister had a coronavirus. who else had a virus? Oh yeah, Boris Johnson, chief advisor, had a coronavirus. So
Like
it's
all of
just
the
like
French politicians
it's
had
just
it.
like all this line of like the most important people in government have like the
But
coronavirus.
you
And
know
yeah,
why? Because they were all
just thank God. I
intermingling
mean,
at those green events. You know, those little global warming events? Well, that's where they all were. And so they all gave it to each other. No,
I
seriously,
was
that's what they did.
I was funny. One guy went hammer in a bow in a bat suit did more to cut emissions than Greta Thunberg in Extinction Rebellion.
Poor Greta has had her career cut short by about a decade overnight because no one's going to be interested in the globalist global warming apocalypse for at least 10 years because they've got bigger things to worry about, like the complete economic collapse of their system.
Yeah, true. And the fact that we could go into global
And she's
recession,
not going to
which would
become an economist overnight. Like, I can't see Greta. Greta's not going to become an economist.
But we both saw that Extinction Rebellion post when they were like, humans are the disease, corona is the cure. Yay, all the humans are dying.
That was a post on Twitter from, well, you know what I loved is what you pointed out, that all the Extinction Rebellion loosely affiliated groups were like, oh, we didn't mean to say that, or we don't represent that. Going, guys, have you read your own manifesto? Have you listened to your people at the head of your organization? They're all for the extinction of humanity. Your group is called Extinction Rebellion.
But then there was all these other Extinction Rebellion green groups under them. They're like, this is eco-fascism. This is not what we do. Oh, a white supremacist group put out the signs and they're having this mini civil war in the front. They're like, this is not eco-fascism. Take those signs down. Did the white supremacist group put it up? It was hilarious when I saw that.
It was, because what they didn't realize is that what they advocate for every single day is the complete destruction of civilization, which is exactly the same thing. But they don't understand what they're asking for because they're kids who glue themselves to things, not very intelligent.
Yeah, true. I saw another post was like Extinction Rebellion had to cancel a dying protest because of the coronavirus. The irony of the anti-capitalist anti-human political extreme radical left-wing communist group protesting a dying protest because of coronavirus. It's hilarious. I don't think they have any self-awareness. When they have to have a straight face when they tweeting and then typing. Yeah.
What do they think about all the bleach that like China and countries in Asia are doing nothing but spray all their streets with bleach every afternoon, and that washes into the rivers? And do they have any comment on that?
I don't understand. I don't know if that has any chance of it just seems. I mean, okay, I've been in Malaysia before. I've seen them spray something to kill all the mosquitoes, but like they get all the citizens to get into the house to ring the alarm so nobody gets hit. I just don't understand. It just reminds me of like it reminds me of the Gillette Jones of the French protest when they spray all this stuff onto the people. But no, I just don't understand what's the point of spraying. I don't get it. I just don't get why they spray bleach.
They think that the bleach will kill the virus off the surfaces because they know this thing can live. Like, this thing has problems, right? It's more like the Spanish flu than any of the other coronaviruses they've got in the way it transmits. So it'll live on a surface for, I think they said 14 days, which is insane because the common cold only lives on a surface for like 24 hours. So what they're trying to do is make sure that it's not living on the road so that when they let people out of their buildings, they don't just go and touch stuff and immediately get infected by the virus. But that's going to have a major environmental impact washing into all the gutters because, if you put bleach in your tanks or in your troughs or in pools, that has an effect on the balances in that. And they're doing this en masse with huge volumes of chemicals. You'd have to wonder what it's going to do. But they're not interested. Extinction Rebellion don't even question it. That's their job, and they don't really care.
That's true. And talking about the virus, I think the one thing that scares me is that how you have all the Uyghur Muslims locked in concentration camps and like these big dirty prison camps and
the organ harvesting camps.
Yeah, it's like this Xinjiang. I think the biggest fear is if the virus hits those camps, China's death toll is going to escalate. It's going to get a lot worse
No,
because
it
the
won't. No,
city.
it won't, because they're just not going to report it.
True, true,
It'll just stay the same. There's not going to be any more deaths in China, regardless of what actually happens. None. They just
true.
look fine.
It's funny how they reopen Wuhan to people, and I'm just like, wait a minute, that doesn't seem. You still got the wet markets. You're still selling live animals. Some idiot's going to be like, okay, so you have completely ruined the world by eating fat. I
And
don't
playing
see
around
what's
in a
the
viral
point in
lab.
eating fat. Oh, yeah, I've heard about that. Apparently, it went out of control. Something like
Did you hear
it went.
the interesting story from some of them over there, that because everyone's so poor, because communism, some of the
Mhm.
scientists from the viral lab were selling the rare wild animals they use for testing to the markets from the lab, which might help to explain why it ended up in the wet markets. I mean, you couldn't write. This is such a great script for some horror film in 20 years, but
Wait.
how stupid
Isn't this how every zombie apocalypse pandemic film start? It's like in a viral lab, and then some that
And China learnt
just
nothing. China reopened the wet markets. They're still in their viral lab.
I know
Learn lessons.
what are they selling? They're selling cat, dog. Well, what on earth are these? It's why would you even? I mean, of course, we all eat animals, okay? We all eat chicken and cows and
We
all
don't
that,
boil them
okay? That
alive, though. Like, we
okay,
do have,
I mean,
we have
okay,
limits.
but most of us eat animals that are deemed by society as being, acceptable. But China has kind of taken that and go, oh, we'll just, they have like a whole dog meat festival in Yunnan, China, when they skin and cook and kill dogs. I mean, dogs. I mean, above all animals,
Why not just
dogs.
why not just eat humans? Like, just why do they even have lines? Let's just go. Or they probably do. Who knows? But I think the
Humans.
point with the wet markets is that we all have, or Western civilization has decided that we're going to have some rules about how we kill animals that we eat, just so that we don't look like the
Wait.
barbarians of
You
history.
know what? You know what? How come the vegan cult have not changed themselves to Chinese embassy? Where is the
Because
vegan?
I
They
like
were like, they
communism more
don't
than
eat
animals.
animals. Where are all the vegan people? Like they seem to have gone really quiet during this pandemic.
Vegans are communists
Like the last,
first, vegans second.
true, true.
It's really, I mean, we laugh, but at the same time, how many pandemics have come out of China? You are doing
Uh,
something wrong as a country. You're like, what you're doing is
uh,
not working, stop doing it. It's like Africa.
bird flu,
Spanish
corona,
flu. They think this
SARS.
they think the sweating sickness came out of China into France and then into England. Like, there's a whole stack, and all the earliest known pandemic in Greece, which I've forgotten its name. I will look it up. The guy in Greece actually traced the pandemic back to shiploads coming in from China. Like, it's just forever.
The China's are the pandemic capital of the world, and now we're only realizing about wet market. And like, how many pandemic is it gonna take to ravage this world before we're like, yeah, we're gonna have to do something like, like who in the UN is not gonna do anything? We're gonna have to start putting, I think Joe ideas put it right. To starve China, we have to starve their economy. That's the number one thing. Because once the economy starts to be starved, they're going to really, panic.
They,
We can't. I mean, we can't be so nice to China after this. I mean, look how we're so close to global recession. I mean, our economies are collapsing.
I think it's hysterical.
And
China thought that they would come in as the savior, but they really misjudged the West. No, they made a massive judgment error, because the West, as I tried to explain on a tweet, we are the revolutionaries of history. We're the ones who rebelled against communism before, socialism, our old monarchies that were oppressive. We rebelled. We don't go, oh yeah, save us, it'll be fine.
Yeah,
We
we
go,
had
screw
histories
the
of
shit, and we rebel.
yeah, we've had histories of revolution, like the French Revolution, and that was that through the entire French monarchy. How many wars did we have of communism? With Malaysia War, the Vietnam War, the Korean War. How many wars did we have? We had an entire freaking Cold War on communism. Like the West might not be a perfect world, but we have a really good memory of communism. Like, we have a good memory of how much destruction it took on the world, like civil wars, famines.
We would rather be
Like
poor and free than slaves of an
yeah,
ideology. And that's
yeah,
the heart of, and anybody who comes to the West who might have come from Asia but who becomes westernized, it's a
mm,
philosophy. More than anything else, it's a philosophy that we believe in freedom and opportunity. And that's it.
that's
And
true.
that's it. That's
That's
all
true,
it
especially
takes.
when that's true. I mean, that's true. Someone should tell us to dine Abbott.
Well, she doesn't get it. She thinks communism is a great idea. She wouldn't go and live under it, but she'd like to rule with it.
No, she feels that Mao Zedong did more than harm, even though he plunged 40 million of his citizens to death and tried to destroy China's history. But
And she
yeah,
loves Mao,
Mao
fan
did
of
more
Mao.
good
Oh
than
my goodness me.
yeah, it's always this authoritarian power streak in like these politicians and academics and journalists. Like they've seen this pandemic and they're like, oh goody, we can lock all these peasants down in their homes and we get to rule their lives. That's
Excuse me, as a
basically what it
peasant, I have a pitchfork. Thank you very much. You know?
is. Like, I think the IPA video, Hugh Remington, Chinatown journalist, is that saying this isn't science. This is dangerous. It's like these are the same people who applaud Greta Thunberg, even though nothing she says is scientifically right. But they're
You
like,
can
we
see
should
carbon
trust the
dioxide in
science
the
on this.
atmosphere.
But they should trust the science on this. The science, the science of science is right. It's just, and I'm like, you applaud Greta Thunberg, which everything she says is not scientifically right. And it's just this hypocrisy from the left. Like they've seen this pandemic, they're like, oh, we get to lock down all these evil peasants and we get to control what they can do, what they can say. And yeah, I just think that they're having this taste of power, but they know that this pandemic is not going to last forever.
You know what this
You know
reminds me
what?
of? Like
Well,
if you've watched some and read some of the history before the Second World War,
yeah.
all the business people and socialites and royalty were all snuggling up to Hitler because it was trendy. They thought that Hitler was doing a good job, and because he was a socialist, we all forget that. And they're all getting cozy with Hitler before the Second World War broke out, and they're ignoring comments about concentration camps, which had started up. They didn't want to admit that was happening. They knew that there were problems in there, but it was all fine. That's how people treat China. Oh, we make money. Oh, other countries have problems too. Don't look too hard at the concentration camps of the Uyghurs. We're not going to investigate that. Don't worry about the social credit system that robs people of their human rights if they don't get on board with communist China. They just hand wave it the same way that people hand waved Germany's rise to power. And
And
I'm
it,
disgusted with people who refuse to look China in the face and go, you know what? That's a dangerous ideology that is
it's
rising up. And they're
basically
very
it's
honest about how
basically
bad
a
they are.
modern day Zionist regime.
Yeah.
It's basically, I mean, it's like the doctors who dared to criticize China suddenly
Where are they?
disappear.
They're gone.
It's like they suddenly disappear. And let's not forget the Falun Gong supporters. They get kidnapped off the streets and they have the organs cut out, but it's not anesthesia. And it's basically left to die on the operating table. So you also got China's organ market, which is basically the organs of still living Falun Gong supporters. You know,
Where is the UN?
and yeah,
I didn't see the UN Human Rights Commission.
about Hitler. Sorry, about Hitler. Yeah, it's like when the Duke was the former King Edward seven. I think it's King Edward the Seven. Yeah, he nestled
Before he
after
abdicated.
Hitler, and the British royal family just basically dumped him. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but
And
he wasn't alone. It was a common thread throughout a lot of the
mm,
Western world that their top echelon of people were on board, and they all try. Even the magazines at the time and the press, the newspapers, they were the same. They were writing in praise of Hitler.
Time magazine gave him a Person of the Year.
Oh, they've got
And
great
then
judgment, those guys.
and then he went to kill 6 million Jews. So probably they looked at that and went, right.
But you know,
That's the made mistake again, and then a century later to give Greta Thunberg Time magazine of the Year, even though it'll be all follow what she said will be plunged straight into hell.
yeah, but why does everyone give Lenin and Mao a free pass on history as well? I know I know the left in our universities are trying to keep that ideology alive, but that ideology killed more people on this planet than anything else has ever done. So, you know, I would like to hear them explain why I think that's okay.
I mean, you look at wars and revolutions. Our history is painted with wars and revolutions, and rebellions, and civil wars. And each time, still, China was overthrown by some bloody war. But no ideology has ever ravaged the West for like an entire century than communism. I mean, the only reason why it fell was because we had leaders like Thatcher and Reagan and Gorbachev who actually stood up against the Cold
And
War,
said
stood
no.
up against communism and said no. And it just seems like if they were able to stand up against Cold War and communism and said no and actually have the backbone, then how come we can't do that to China? Like, are we gonna wait till like a war breaks out with China or something?
We keep getting told that we can't untangle ourselves from China. Well, I'm sorry. We existed for a long time without China, right? We chose to go with them. There are billions of other people on this earth that we can go with. We don't have to go with China.
We untangled ourselves from the control of the United Kingdom by
We can do
passing
whatever
Australia. I know, but we untangled ourselves from the United Kingdom, became a sovereign member of the British Commonwealth. I'd rather we went with Taiwan. Taiwan gave us fabric to make masks. I'd rather we go with Taiwan because that would piss China off the most.
The world, to its absolute disgrace, the world abandoned Taiwan to please China. And the collective power of the world, which has a great amount of power over China, could have said, you know what? We support Taiwan, and China wouldn't have been able to do a thing about it. It can bark all it likes, but it couldn't actually do anything about it. And instead, we let China run around and annex countries that don't belong to it and kill so many people, and we said nothing. And we left these countries to basically rot. And we nearly did the same thing to Hong Kong.
I mean, it's like we don't learn from history. I mean, we could have said no to communism early on, but then we saw decades of wars and famines and plagues and dictatorships until we finally, at the height of the Cold War, we finally said no. We're no longer going to accept this Cold War, this communism. This world has nearly been brought onto the brink of total destruction. We nearly fell into a nuclear world war. Please, no, people want freedom. It's like we can't wait to China does something so destructive on the world, then we finally went, we can't stop them. And then, we'll just be like, you had this amount of time to stop China. And you know what? China recently got onto the UN Human Rights Council.
Oh yeah, let's just give them the chief torture of power. Like we're giving the chief torture of power over human rights. I mean, that's like making Saudi Arabia in charge of women's rights. It's ridiculous. It makes no sense, and it just completely invalidates the UN as an institution.
I know it's just absolutely. I know it's terrible. I know it's just like Taiwan recently re-elected a few months back Tsai Ing-wen, and she's like this. She has a strong stance against China, right? Her opponent, the Kuomintang, is very pro-China. Taiwan re-elected Tsai Ing-wen was a stonking majority. She got 80-90% of the vote. She was hugely re-elected by the people of Taiwan. And we Taiwan's apparently not in the World Health Organization. I don't know why.
Because
But
they
I
weren't allowed
saw
to join.
because I saw a Paul Johnson Watson post about the Director General of the United Nations. I'm just gonna say the Chinese Health Organization. That's how I'm gonna call it from now on. The Chinese Health Organization. Did you know? Hang on, let me find it. This is shocking when I saw it. The Director General of the United. Oh yeah. The Director General of the WHO is a former member of a violent revolutionary communist party in Ethiopia that denied emergency medical treatment to ethnic groups as well as imprisoning and torturing dissidents. No wonder he loves China so much. China basically is doing what he used to do, so of course he's going to suck up to China.
The world has to be really, really careful because political systems evolve in the same way as animals evolve, right?
Yeah.
So it evolves as to what's successful, not necessarily what's a good idea. So we have the West evolving toward freedom and liberties, and everything has stops along the way and problems, but that's what it's been evolving towards. And you have religious tyrannies and communism and socialism evolving the other ways, but those three systems are still all about absolute power and control and tyranny and dictatorships. Now those two things are very different. And they have become their own entities, and they will start to compete with each other like modern humans had to compete with other versions of humanity before we all got here. And some of them are going to win and some of them are going to go extinct. And we're not even sure yet if the world will continue to coexist with different political systems, or if there will be winners in our political systems for humanity. And I fear that tyranny is very successful as far as conquering and destruction. Liberty is successful as far as producing and thinking and creating, but murdering is easier than making things. And it's very easy for a violent dictatorship. You see it in the Middle East. There's a reason the Middle East is dust and rock and crap, because they fight, and it's tyrannies fighting tyrannies. You've only got Israel. That's the only one standing in the middle going, hey, can we be a democracy? And they're surrounded by carnage. That's a great metaphor for what's happening to Western nations, where they have got walls up, they are free, and they are democracies surrounded by tyrannies that will fight and reduce the world to rubble and poverty and starvation. And we have to be so careful to protect and teach our children the value of liberty and be prepared to defend our liberty. And I don't know how to really get that.
That is why I'm so passionate about the belief that all kids shouldn't go to universities, because we have examples of communist-leaning Marxists who describe themselves as progressives. I see progressive as a really overwhelming term.
It's not really progressive. They're actually regressive socialists.
Yeah, they are, but they very much indoctrinate, these kids. I mean, these kids are still like sponges. They'll just suck up anything. And, and they just indoctrinate them with, socialism, said that it's good, and communism, and, despite the history. And there's no wonder you get so many kids at universities to like, oh yeah, socialism is great.
Can they define socialism? No. Do they know the history of socialism? No. They have no idea what they're talking about.
I know, it's just, they're like, I shared that video on Twitter of these American university students, of course, of America. They're like, oh yeah, socialism is good. Dispersing the wealth, economic equality. Like everybody gets a taste of wealth, and all that. But then the guys like, well, can you define socialism? And they're like, that's the thing. They've been taught to regurgitate these rubbish.
They get taught hashtags and banners and catch lines. They don't get taught an idea. Like, if you're going to be a Marxist university lecturer, the least you could do is actually teach the kids what it is. It's history, what it means, it's philosophy, and see if they actually agree with it. But when you sit a kid down, if you don't tell them what the principles are called, then they prefer the current systems we have, and they think socialism's horrific. But if you use the word socialism, they believe they're so conditioned to think it means kindness, which is rubbish, that that's what they actually believe and repeat.
I mean, that's the thing is that, I think the left has been really good in terms of marching into our education
They're brilliant at it.
institution. And they just, and like Alien, like from the Alien movie, they just breed these leftist idiots out onto, the media and academia, and they just continue that breeding process. That's how I call it. I know it's strange, but like they just come out and they just latch onto, these students, and it's just like it's really terrible. Like, I don't see any leftist propaganda in my tape. My tape is completely clean. But then you see the university, they're promoting the socialist conferences, the Marxist conferences. It's no wonder they hate capitalists and conservatives and libertarians and like people like Bettina Ahn and Mara Yiannopoulos. They wanted to hate them so much because they know that there's a opposing view. But I think the left has been really good at corrupting our education institutions. That's why I wrote in my article about it. That's why I'm the type of person who goes, no, not everybody has to go to university. It's like collective thinking that everybody has to get a degree, everybody has to go to university. With so many of those degrees are rubbish. And,
It's a lot like school. Like, it's a lot like our school children can't read or write when they leave school, but they can regurgitate the global warming propaganda lines. Well, universities producing people with, several degrees against their name who still can't recite the alphabet, which mostly 4-year-olds can do. And they have no functioning problem-solving skills. I remember distinctly sitting down one of my new colleagues who I was training, who had 2 degrees from a university. She was a millennial, and she looked at me like, yeah, but I was trying to get her to work out one of these invoices we had, and she said, yeah, but what's the answer? I'm like, what do you mean, what's the answer? You have to work out the answer. This is the real world. The real world doesn't give you answers. You have to sit down there and find out. She goes, oh yeah, but what if it doesn't have a solution? It's like, what are you talking about? You have to find a solution. This is your job now in the real world. You don't have a textbook. You're not going to get fed an answer by a lecturer. You have to think for yourself and work out what you're going to do. And they don't have that mentality at all. I don't even know how they got through university without the slightest notion that you have to think for yourself. I find it very frustrating.
I've noticed that migrant kids that come to Australia and assimilate into Australia, they actually do a lot better in education than their Aussie counterpart. Like, they actually do a lot better in the testing and exam, do a lot better in study, and they do a lot better in their academics. And like, I'm not trying to say that that's a bad thing, that's a good thing, but I just think that there's a big gap between migrant kids assimilating to Australia and Australian students. And I noticed that in my tape, like, I enrolled late, but I managed to be at the top of my assignment, and yet I see the other Aussie students, they're kind of falling behind. And so I don't know, I just think that there's a real difference between migrant kids and Aussie students. Like, migrant kids are doing better.
It's very, very recent. So I remember I was actually in school, and the year behind me are the people who had the first major change to the way that they taught people how to read and write. And that the decision to change how people can read when they're very young has impacted their whole lives. Because if you don't know how to read properly, then that sets you back years to begin with. And then they stopped learning, like, how you learn by rote. And so we used to be sat down, we had to learn our times tables over and over again. Like, the basics you had to learn by repetition. And then you could build on that later on. Well, they stopped doing that. So we, as a civilization, we were really good at educating our kids. We had a great balance between rote learning and drilling stuff into kids when they were young, so that they could then do the more advanced learning throughout high school, because they were prepared to do that. So Asian systems in particular are guilty of just rote learning answers until kids go insane. And so they lack creativity, which is a big problem that we have with a lot of, if you hire people from Asia, they aren't problem solvers naturally. That's just because they haven't been educated that way. So we had a better balance. I'm not saying we should go to, obviously, we don't want to go to a communist system where kids have no freedom, but we have to go back to that balance that when we had it done, we don't need to work out how to do it. Just literally go back 30, 40 years, go, that's it, that curriculum, that was great, and just put it back. And that's all you have to do. It was fine. There was nothing wrong with it. We broke something that worked.
I don't agree with the need of like open plan classrooms and facilities. Like what we need is like, okay, I'm going to use an example. Peter Kretlin, she was in a school, just the six of her and none who will beat them with a stick or whatever, a ball. And yeah, she just had this simple class, and then she went and graduated with a law degree, went to work as chief of staff with Tony Abbott. Now she's in Sky News Australia. We don't need all these fancy facilities and like huge spending on schools.
They've got 3-year-olds with interactive whiteboards. They're 3. They're 3. What are they going to do with an interactive whiteboard? I mean, it's ridiculous.
When I came to Australia, and I went to high school, right? Everything was a complete shock to me. I was really bad in education and math because everything was a shock to me. It took a long time to develop my confidence. But then by the time I left high school, I'm not sure what it was. I'm pretty sure it was through work ethic. I got an A in German English, top of my class, so that was really good. But I noticed that like the Aussie students in my English class were probably the most worst behaved, like the worst.
You know why? Because they don't have a fear of failure. So when I was at school, I went to a private school, and we were more afraid of our parents than our teachers. So if we failed, the Asian parents have that as well. Like if we failed, we knew we were going to be in serious trouble. And so, and we were allowed to fail. So our teachers, if we were crap, our teachers would fail us. There was consequences for us not working hard. And so that fear of failure is a really important thing that kids need to learn. But in this new environment of everyone gets a prize, you all get participation awards, there's no winners, that teaches people to be apathetic about their education, about knowledge. And worse is that when they get into the real world, and in the real world you do fail, and no one can help you not fail, you will actually fail. They have no idea how to process failure as adults because they've never failed as kids. And you know how they complain about the NAPLAN exams or how stressful it is to go to an exam? Oh, they might not get good. Bullshit. They should be doing as many exams as possible. They need to learn how to get stressed. They need to learn how to do all-nighters, and they need to learn how to fail.
It's like when every year the media goes about the stressful NAPLAN exams. Do
you roll your eyes really hard? Because I do.
And I'm like, now what? Excuse me. If they get into the real world, they're gonna have to go through this induction program. They're gonna have to do, be forced to, I don't know, fill out tax returns or manage a budget. Like if they can't sit through a simple NAPLAN exam, which, by the way, I just want to put out the expression when they say abolish NAPLAN, I'm like, no, we shouldn't abolish NAPLAN. But I think it should be reformed, but I'll say that later. It's like, how are they going to be able to file a tax return, pay the bills, manage the budget? Oh my God. Cooking, like living by themselves, surviving in the world.
Okay.
How are they going to do that if they can't even manage a simple
net exam? They're also missing out on a great part of school, which what that panic around big exams, like when you do the HSC, everyone gets really panicky. You're all drinking way too much coffee. You're in study groups. You're working all night. You're messaging each other at 2 a.m. because you didn't do your exam or your assignment, and your printer's not working, and you learn all your tech support trying to get your assignment to print. And that stuff is stress-inducing when you're there in it. But later on, those are the memories and the friendships that you learn the most from. And they don't get that. They're not learning that, and they're not having that. And it's going to affect them as they go forward.
And I think that NAPLAN should be reformed in a manner that
take it back to what it was before. We used to have those exams.
I don't know. I feel like NAPLAN should be reformed in a manner that I don't know. I just think it just needs to be better reformed. No,
It
right
used to be
now,
pretty good. It used to be. We used to
yeah.
have. I don't remember what it was called. But then we had the same thing as NAPLAN. And we used to have it in grade. Wow, I think it was grade 3, grade
Mm,
6, grade
mm,
9, grade 10
mm.
was the big one, and the grade 10 one you could use for as a qualification. And then you had obviously HSC. But what was so funny is if your school is doing things correctly, our exams were so much harder than these state exams that our teachers weren't even telling us about the state exams. So, except for the HSC, obviously in the Year 10 exam, we didn't even know that the English, Maths, and Science exams for the other years were coming. We just sit down one day, they'd be like, "Oh, by the way, can you guys knock this exam off in this period?" We're like, "What exam?" Because it's so far behind what you should actually be learning. But now that easy exam, which has been made even easier than it used to be, is now considered to be hard. Like, how far have our standards slipped that that's now a stress-inducing exam? It shouldn't be.
I mean, in WA, they have this because I did crap on my now plan exam. They have this thing in year 11 and 12 that this extra literature and maths online tests. Now, I don't agree with online testing exam. I think they should be paper and
Oh
pen.
no, it shouldn't be online. Why would you do it? No, it should be paper and pencil.
Pencil and paper,
Yeah, 100%.
because like then you will remember it. You'll remember that stress. Whereas if you're online, you don't remember it
No,
because pencil and paper, you feel that pressure that radiates throughout the room, and you feel it and you remember it. But it's like this online literature reading and numeracy test you needed to pass in order to be able to get into university if you wanted it. I forgot what it was. Online literature numeracy assessments. The one bit I couldn't pass was mathematics. The stupid thing was, they tell you you couldn't pass, but they will not tell you why.
What went
So
wrong?
you have to keep doing it until you pass, but you'll never know why you passed it. The heads of maths across WA tried to force the education minister to change it, but he wouldn't. So it, it's like the way they're doing testing and exams is so ridiculous. It shouldn't be online, and it should just go back to traditional basics.
But
Like
funny story. When I did the HSC, I took art and I did 3 levels of English. So I did extension 2, which was so I had 3 separate classes of English. And when I had my exams, I think it was advanced English and visual arts theory on the same day after each other. So one was before lunch and one was after lunch. And this is how well the curriculum was put together, is the same long essay question in the English exam was repeated in the visual arts theory exam. So there are a whole stack of us who sat down, I'd literally just written maybe 14 pages of essay for the English exam, and I just had lunch and we got in and we read at the same time that next question in the visual arts exam, and all of us looked up and went, "You've got to be kidding me." So we had to sit down and write another 12 pages. And it was not even a good question to start with. It was crap. It was about some art installation of a ship that has sounds, and it was awful. But that's terrible. We've got to go soon. I've got to go and feed animals. My puppy is crying. The food's gone.
I know my mom came back again, and she was like, "This better be like internet." I'm like, "No, it's not."
I've got to go. But I actually do have to go because it's like, what is it, 4 o'clock? So I got to go look after my puppy dog. He's been patiently waiting. By the way, he did actually go into his bed. You know how I put a tweet up saying he wouldn't go in his bed?
Yeah,
The next night,
yeah.
he actually went into his bed. So I should take that back and
Oh,
retract my criticism of my puppy dog. So,
that's good. Yeah.
but do you want to say goodbye to everyone? And
Yes. Goodbye, everyone, and thank you for the return of Kim Penguin Radio, Kim
it's
Penguin
radio.
Podcast. Actually, no podcast, podcast.
It was fun, and we will see you all again soon.
Yep. Bye.